I do not have a beverage with me, but I'll trust you to have one, because my periscopes just go so much better with a beverage. So, since we get 500 people, which will be about in 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you how a deal could get done for DACA and The Wall. So I was looking on the news, and I saw that the way the news is reporting the setup, how the table is set for the negotiations of DACA and The Wall, is that Democrats are saying that they would be in favor of funding an upgrade to the existing border security, but they would not be in favor of, quote, the wall. And of course, the president is cleverly asking for the entire funding, $18 billion. Now, the odds of getting $18 billion, or really whatever the first offer is in general, no matter what the situation, is generally low. You end up meeting somewhere in the middle. But here's the interesting part. How do you approve a wall, which is what the Republicans want, while the Democrats can still say, we did not approve the wall? How can you do one thing that can be seen as two things? In other words, how can two movies play on one screen? And we're already seeing that happen. We're seeing, for example, that the Democrats are saying, well, we would okay with improving security at the border, but not building the wall. So here's what a compromise or agreement would look like. It would look like building the wall as an upgrade to a part of the wall that already has a wall or a fence. And all you'd be saying is, well, let's see if this design for a wall is better than what was there already, which was a fence. This allows the Republicans to say, look, I said we'd get a wall, it's already started. Here's the picture of the wall. We're literally building the wall, and it's already started. The Democrats can say, we told them we would not be in favor of the wall, we're just in favor of increasing border security. So in some places where the fence wasn't working, we improved border security. But we certainly didn't approve an entire wall. So I think there's room for both sides to claim success by doing one thing. And the one thing would be, if you're a Republican, you certainly don't want to commit to the entire wall without knowing if it at least works. Because there's a real question whether somebody will figure out a way to just get over your wall. So you build part of the wall, and you see if it makes a difference in that section of the border. If it moves people to other places to get across, then you know your wall works, and then you can make a second decision later about funding more of it or not. So that's where I see the likely compromise being. That will improve existing border securities with the new technology, wall technology, and both sides will get to claim victory because both sides do want border security. They just don't want to be able to claim that one side won and the other side didn't. So giving them something they can both claim as their victory, an upgrade to an existing fenced part of the wall, looks like an upgrade to Democrats, which they favor, looks like the wall to Republicans, which they favor. Win-win. And by the way, no matter what you do, you have to start somewhere. And if you're smart, you build part of it and see how it works before you fully commit to the rest of it. So both Republicans and Democrats could get exactly what they want in the near term, which is a little bit better border security, and in the case of the wall people, a little bit of wall. Somebody says, that's not a win. No, it's a first step toward winning. So what I'm suggesting is if both sides share the same idea of the first step, you can take the first step, because that doesn't preclude either direction. It doesn't preclude you stopping, and it doesn't preclude you continuing. But everybody agrees the first step of beefing up the border security makes sense. Yeah, so if the experience is you only build part of the wall and then people go to a different place to cross, then you just keep improving the wall. Now, obviously, there are weak parts and strong parts in any border security, but it is sort of a whack-a-mole situation where you figure out where the problems are and then you fix them as you go. You can't really, I think it would be impossible to, guess how everything will turn out on day one. How the hell does he get the rest built? The way he gets the rest built is by demonstrating that the first part worked. So if it worked and people are not just easily climbing over it, then, or if people are just going around it to another place, you have your argument, which is, well, the wall worked. The only thing that isn't working is that we need more of it. Yeah, if you're a Republican, the position you want to take is that you want the full wall and nothing less. Yeah, so Rand Paul is talking about cutting funding to Pakistan and using that money for the wall. Not the worst idea I've heard. DACA will make whoever approved this seem more sympathetic, yeah. The DACA deal is a loser for Republicans, you think? Well, it's a loser either way. I think if Republicans deported the DACA folks, they would never win again. If they don't deport them, but they figure out some way to make things work, trade it for a wall or whatever, they have an argument. But deporting them would be the end of the Republican Party. So I was just tuning into MSNBC to see how they handled the latest presidential tweet, and of course, it's all they want to talk about. But what was interesting is the little label, the chyron that they run below the episode or the segment that's on TV right now. Instead of saying genius, it didn't use the word genius that he called himself. He said he was very smart or stable. And I thought it was clever that they saw the trap and they didn't use the word genius. So they had to talk about his tweet without using the primary word in the tweet. Upholding the law is the end of the Republican Party, somebody says. Yes, in this case it would be. Yeah, you tipped them off. I might have. 800,000 new Democrats. Well, there's a separate question of whether or not they get to vote or what it would take to become citizens. There are very few people who actually could argue for open borders in public. Because the trouble is, that's the sort of thing you might say with your stone friends. But it's pretty hard to argue for open borders in public and expect that to go well. Passing DACA would be 40 million new Democrats. Even if you got the wall or part of it. Reagan argued for open borders? Well, not in that sense. California got ruined by open borders. I'm in favor of strong border security. So just to be clear, I'm a strong border security person. But there are in the normal course of life special cases that you have to treat as special cases. Let me toss down a North Korean peace plan idea for you. It's a slight variation on the ones you've heard before. So it seems to me that the smartest country in the world is Switzerland, because Switzerland has just about the highest standard of living, and they've managed to have no military and not get invaded. And so somehow they've managed to persuade the world that they're a special case, that Switzerland is the one country who's just not going to get in your stuff, and they're just going to mind their own business. So is there anything that would prevent North Korea from rebranding itself as the Switzerland of the East? In other words, a country which all other countries agree to not attack in return for them not having a military. Now, they wouldn't be the first ones to do this. Is it Costa Rica? I think it's Costa Rica that has no military because the United States basically has them covered, which is a smart way to go. If you know that you're surrounded by big superpowers with big militaries, the only thing you care is that they're not going to invade you. And the thing is, if they wanted to, they could probably do that anyway. So Kim Jong-un is rumored to have gone to school in Switzerland. So he really gets Switzerland. And he also knows what their quality of life is. And he knows that it's unlikely anybody's going to attack him. Now, part of it's because the mountains, right? They don't want it's hard to attack in the mountains, historically. But there's also just something in our minds that tell us Switzerland's just sort of not on the list of countries you attack because they're neutral. And being neutral shouldn't protect you, but it does, because everybody just says, they're neutral. Okay. And they don't really have a border or anything. They don't have a border with anybody who really wants to take them over that badly. Now, North Korea could do two things. Politically, they could say, all right, we're going to be Switzerland to the east, and we will get rid of our nukes, and we'll get rid of most of our army, in return for China, the United States, South Korea, and Russia all guaranteeing our sovereignty. All right, so all we ask to get rid of our weapons is you call us Switzerland to the east. But there's another part. There's one other thing that North Korea could uniquely do that would be hard for another country to match. They could become the poor man's Las Vegas. Because one of the things we know about North Korea is that, weed is legal, and, basically it's like a crime syndicate in the form of a country. Now, you might say to yourself, hey, we don't want a crime syndicate running a bunch of casinos, but I would argue that crime syndicates did a really good job of making Las Vegas what it is. And in the long run, I'm assuming that some of that became more legitimate over time. But imagine the money that you could make if you just said, all right, we're North Korea, what happens here stays here, bring your drugs if you want them, prostitution is legal, it probably would be if they did it. You can gamble, you can do whatever you want. We have no laws here in North Korea. They would get a lot of money, and then they could call themselves Switzerland of the East, and they would be about the safest country in the world. And the Kim Jong-un family could rule forever, and nobody would care. Yet, keep in mind that this works with my idea of the 100-year plan for reunification. So you could do both. You could say that you're planning to reunify, but you got 100 years, so you got to do something in that time. You might as well fix what you can. North Korea does not want this, period. Well, what North Korea wants will become less and less important to North Korea and everybody else. because they're just not going to be able to get that much. So they're going to take what's the best deal they can get. And I'm describing the best deal they can get. Somebody predicts that Trump is heading for a disaster of his own making. Well, that is a bold and boring prediction. Trump is laughing at his enemies. Well, North Korea has one big problem, which is that they've kept their citizens off the internet for a generation or two, which means that the moment their citizens have any kind of normal country access to the internet, they're going to find out what their situation is and has been in a way they never saw before. So they'd start to see it through external eyes, and they're not going to like it. So the only way that you can transition from whatever North Korea is now to something that their own citizens would abide by, if they really understood what was happening, would be that you offer them a better deal. The Fire and Fury book is a bestseller. Yeah, you can't help that. So I've been watching everybody throw Steve Bannon under the bus. There seems to be some general agreement now that Steve Bannon was the big leaker in the White House. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but since Steve Bannon hasn't admitted that, nor has anyone else, how would we know he's the leaker, other than the president's tweets, and he might not know it either? It sounds like it's true, but do we really know that Steve Bannon was the leaker? It's being reported like it's just an understood fact, and I'm not so sure that's true. I'm sure that everybody at that level in the White House does a little bit of leaking, but I have no reason to think he was the special leaker. Could be. I just haven't seen that evidence. Yeah, sloppy Steve. Sarah Sanders said so. Well, but would she know? Does anybody really know who's doing the leaking? Because the whole point of the leak is that the journalist doesn't say who it came from, so they can get more leaked information later. And the person who does the leaking doesn't say it. So if the journalist doesn't say who the leaker is and the leaker doesn't say, how would anybody know, really? Rush said he was, but would Rush know? Yeah, so everybody seems to just be declaring that Bannon was the big leaker, but without I've not seen anything that looks like evidence of that. It just seems like, true by declaration. I'm not saying it's not true. I just haven't seen any evidence. Well, I think they all leaked, so if you ask somebody if they're the leaker, you might see some evasion there. Yeah, the leaking did seem to slow down anyway. All right, that's all for now.